Good evening. I'm Tony Christ in Falls Church, Virginia. Ishmael Modney is in
Good
Texas,
evening.
and it is Christmas Eve that we're taping this, 6:19 Eastern Standard Time, and we hope to get it up by Christmas Day. And the topic today is there a God? And that's coming into play in more and more ways in 2023 and going forward. And we want to, on this Christmas Eve, tomorrow being the birthday of Jesus, not by the old calendar, but by the one we're all using, those of us that are Christians, I thought it was appropriate to go over life and at least get to a point where we can see a way that there is a God. So let's start this, Ishmael, and I'll let you chime in a little later. Life started on the planet, to believe the empiricists, the cause-effect guys, the scientific method guys, 4 billion years ago. 4 billion years ago, not million. We're told there were 5 extinction events where the life at that time was extinguished from either 75% to 98% of all life due to an extinction event. Now, if you have a 4 billion year time span, you can see that there could be easily hundreds of millions of years between extinction events. Let's talk about the dinosaurs. Well, the dinosaurs reigned on Earth, we're told, for 165 million years, not 1,000, million. They were dominant. They dominated all other species. There were insects at the time. At the very end of their reign, a very few, very small mammals appeared, but they were dominant. They dominated everything. The mammals were like rodents, lived underground. You know, you didn't want to be above ground with a dinosaur walking around. You wouldn't exist very long. And so the dinosaurs were extinguished by a meteor that hit the Earth and was so big, and I don't want to quote the size. I don't recall how big it was, but it was huge. And within 2 days, it enveloped the whole world in a cloud of dust and smoke and eliminated the dinosaurs. And you had some insects survive. And the only dinosaur today, well, you know what they are? The only remnants from dinosaurs are birds. Ironically, birds are the only direct descendants of dinosaurs. In any case, man started to appear in the form we know it somewhere around, and again, not exact at all, let's say less than 100,000 years ago. And there's an interesting thing that even preceded that, and it's a recent discovery by paleontologists. And I've got 3 named in the letter we have on the website. Now, and after we have a discussion, is there a God is the discussion, I encourage you to go to the website and read the 2-page paper, because it's going to pick up things that I can tell you that I probably haven't remembered to tell you. So about 335,000 years ago to 241,000 years ago, a species that preceded Homo sapien called Homo Notedi, Notedi, inhabited Africa, South Africa. And outside of Johannesburg, recently it was discovered in an underground cave that they buried their deceased members. Now they only had a brain a third the size of Homo sapien. Okay, they weren't as bright as us, but they are practicing behavior that suggests that they were aware that people would die, and they were aware for some reason that they had to bury them. And that's something generally associated with religion, even though we're talking 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. Over time, there were other suggestions that our ancestors were relying on religion. There were many drawings in caves, shamanic beliefs. I'm going to say it right. Shamanic, Tony, shamanic. Shamanic beliefs were exhibited in caves that suggested ulterior worlds or a world without death. So early predecessors to us were showing signs that they weren't very well formed, but they were showing signs that they were aware. They were first of all aware that we are finite. We have a beginning and an end, as does everything around us. But they're also aware that there was something else. Let's call it spiritualism, some spirit, some other force out there. And as the years passed, coming into AD time frame, a man that I always thought really helped define the world that I understand. St. Thomas Aquinas stood up around 1250, give or take, AD, and said that there only has to be one free act to have freedom to choose. And if we have freedom to choose, then we're free. Now, there are constraints to that. And obviously, if we're only talking about one or a limited number of acts that are free, it also means that a lot of life is affected by our biology, what we inherited, by our environment, how we came into the world. All these things have profound effects on our life. But there are many people today that believe that they totally determine our lives, that we're a total product of cause and effect, that we're a total product of our heredity and our environment, and that we can't make an individual decision. It's all predetermined. They're called fatalists. And that world is a world that we don't really, at least I don't really subscribe to, because as you see over time, as long as we can make a free choice, we have responsibility. And all the things that developed in our sophisticated social systems today started, I believe, with free choice. So Thomas Aquinas, I think, was just a very large figure, And society today is based on ethical behavior. And ethical behavior, moral behavior is what you and I do. Ethical behavior is what the society does. There's societal standards. And the intent of it, I've always believed, is to minimize, if not eliminate, evil. Now, evil, or you can define it many different ways. It's very easy for me to lump everything into one word and call it evil. So those systems, those ethical systems, were predicated on something. They're based on something, and that's what we're talking about today. And it's outside of the world of cause effect, because you have a very narrow window of cause and effect. If you believe that truth is only determined by cause and effect, well, then you don't have room for spiritualism or God. But your world is, you're a bean counter. You have a very narrow existence. You say that the only way to derive truth is through the scientific method, through empiricism, through cause and effect. And you fall into a very material world, okay? And in that kind of a world, it's hard to differentiate a human from material. And very many people, all the way to our political systems today, the closed systems today, fully believe that individuals are merely material, no more than material. And closed systems are fascism, communism, systems where the economies are totally closed. And in an open system, we leave responsibility with the individual because the individual's free to choose. And you can make a bad choice or a good choice. This is something children need to understand, that there are consequences to choices. And all this, to me, is related to spiritualism and the value and the importance of the human being. So basically, we're talking about two different worlds. We're talking about a world of cause and effect, where every action has a cause, and every action in the extreme sense is predetermined, almost like fatalism. And we're talking about a world where you're free to choose. And you have an ethical system, and you can make choices of whether or not you're going to act in accord with the ethical system, in accord with your morality, or you're going to oppose it and be prepared to take a consequence. And needless to say, our system in America is the latter, at least to date it is, and we hope it doesn't change. And right now in the world, there's approximately 8 billion, 80 million people. 31% are Christians. That's, to be precise, 2,173,180,000. 2,173,000,000. I better learn how to talk here.
2 billion. 2 billion. Yes.
173,180,000. 23% are Muslim, which is approximately 1,598,510. 21% are Hindi or Buddhist. 16% are atheists, agnostics, or unaffiliated. Now, unaffiliated is a large there. It wasn't the statistic I found wasn't broken up as to how many of either one, and only 0.2% were Jewish. It's approximately 14 million, the very smallest, one of the very smallest groups of religion in the world, yet undeniably the most powerful monetarily in the world, undeniably. So in that environment, if we take into consideration our history, which we've just taken a very brief snapshot look at, and we consider the fact that as we evolve fully into human beings, the human beings we know today, as we developed, consistent with every stage of becoming a human being, a separate living organism from the rest of the living organisms, we developed a spiritualism, which eventually went into religion. But the spiritualism, the visibility of it, goes back to the time we were changing from another very close relative into our human selves, into Homo Sapiens. And that is very fascinating to me. And I'm going to tell you what it suggests to me regarding the question of our podcast, which is there a God? I'm going to tell you that, but I'm going to let Ishmael relay a story he told me earlier, and any other feelings he has that are consistent with spiritualism. And then not immediately next week, we're supposed to go back to the economy next week, but in a couple of weeks, we're going to come back and focus on these religions and talk about the differences and talk about any meaning we can get out of them. But one thing I want to say before I turn it over to Ishmael is we're in the world of metaphysics. We're going from the world of the finite, which is our world. Everything we know and touch and feel has a beginning and an end, to the world of the infinite. And that's where the very rudimentary foundation of spiritualism began. So, all right, Ishmael, why don't you talk a little bit about one of your experiences and what you feel about it and how it might be a spiritual experience?
Certainly, and I think it's the connection we both have. We've known each other since I was 5 years old through Brian, your son, who passed away December 15th, 2004. When he passed away, I'd known him about 17 years at the time. We met in kindergarten in 1987.
It's very tragic. It's hard for me to say it today, but Brian died from a heroin overdose. He was a senior at UVA. We had to go and get his mechanical engineering degree posthumously. He and Ishmael became Eagle Scouts together. They were best friends for, as Ishmael said, 17 years.
Yeah, and we couldn't imagine a day without him, and I still can't. And there's moments where maybe not as frequent today as 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but where I often have dreams about him. But what's interesting is, and I thought about this, my son was born December 15th, 2021. 17 years to the day Brian passed away. After I'd lost my best friend, I feel that I was given a new one through my son exactly 17 years later. And as I was saying before the podcast, and this is one of the many events where in life, and our family has been religious always, but where you have that real belief, that intrinsic, deep down belief that there is a God. This is one of those that always reinforces it. This isn't a coincidence how these dates match up, these time frames match up, just how everything matched up. It could have been December 16th or December 14th, whatever, but it was December 15th, which I felt that day. I felt it was very, very powerful. So that's one of those where when you talk about the metaphysics and just some cosmic connection that no matter how we interpret it, no matter what book we read or how we were taught religion, it to me has confirmed the existence and just cements my belief that there is a God.
Now, one thing I will say, and that's interesting, Ishmael is Muslim. I'm a Greek Orthodox. When we get to discussing religions in a couple of weeks, we're going to hone in on specifics. But it is somewhat amazing. Brian's grandfather was born 1917, also 17, and born on December 15th, who I've written quite a bit about. But it's a tragedy for me. It's hard to talk about that. But back to these early rudimentary signs of religion and what I believe they mean. I believe there is truth that can come out of metaphysical experiences, and I don't believe truth is the exclusive franchise of cause effect, the scientific method, empiricism. Although we've observed and learned many phenomenal things and progressed in a material sense tremendously from those avenues, and they'll continue, and they do have an effect, but I don't believe they're an exclusive franchise on truth. And I feel these earlier predecessors to us today that were showing signs of awareness of their own timed existences were practicing very early spiritualism in the caves and the drawings they did on the walls, in burying them, their deceased. And I believe that it evolved as we evolved. So I believe religion is biological. I believe the fact that God exists is biological, because at the earliest time, one of the first signs that's not often talked about that differentiated us from other species was, and as our cognitive ability started to develop was the fact that we were affected by early spiritualism, which goes right into religion. So there's the answer, and I have a paper that's probably will enlighten, bring up a number more points on it that's going to be posted on the website. We hope to get this on the website Christmas Day. Thinking about what you said, what a tragedy. And our family's biggest loss for sure. But anyway, we hope you all have a blessed day tomorrow. It's Christmas, and we're glad to be able to talk with you, and we look forward to doing it again shortly. Anything else, Ishmael, you want to add? Or
Thank you. Just have a very merry and peaceful Christmas. I know for many people around the world it's difficult, but again, for those of us with belief, we always believe there is something better ahead for whatever reason, and that may God be with you, and just a Merry Christmas this year.
have a blessed day. Thank you.